Hello, today I'm going to talk about how I created my current portfolio website, Graceis.online. So I started by determining the purpose of the website, which is an important thing to know anytime you begin designing. So I knew I wanted to make a portfolio website, but different from the one that I currently have. I'm trying to branch out into a more creative and artistic field of software development, so I wanted to ditch the clean professional look and create a website that shows more of my personality. Therefore, the purpose is to create a fun, engaging portfolio website that tells the viewer about me and my work. Now, how do I do that? So I always start designing in Figma, beginning with a desktop-sized frame and a mobile-sized frame. I love to draw inspiration from nostalgia, so I started exploring the idea of making my homepage look like the desktop of an older Windows computer. So I was born in 2001, so the version that I grew up on was Windows XP, but I did find these really cool Windows 98 icons from Alex Mueb. Either way, thank you for your service. When I create websites, I find that the little details like colors and fonts help me get excited about the design, and I often take inspiration from the fonts themselves by finding one that I like and then letting it drive the rest of the project. I know many people typically start with the actual content of a website first, and I start with those little details like color schemes and fonts because they just help drive my creative process, I guess. So it's all in the details for me. I almost always use Google Fonts in my projects for two reasons. One, they are free open source fonts that can be used for personal and commercial use. And two, Figma automatically includes the Google Font library in their font options pane, so I can design using that specific font in Figma, and it works perfectly. I love websites like dafont.com, but almost all of these are only free for personal use, and they require a commercial license if you want to use them for any other purpose. So I just am super careful about font licensing and licensing in general when creating websites because there are a lot of rules, and I don't want to break any of them and get sued for using something wrong. Anyways, as I was playing around with it, I decided that the website would start with a landing page and a click to enter button that goes to the actual home page. But maybe I was also just trying to move on from whatever this design attempt was because it wasn't looking good. So now for the real homepage, I pulled in some of those Windows 98 icons, which would serve as navigation to other parts of the site. So after a little bit of playing around with it, the old Windows style idea that I was going for was just not hitting the mark, and I needed some more inspiration. At the time, and still currently, I was deep in an Alice in Wonderland obsession. And I remembered that the original book by Lewis Carroll and its illustrations are in the public domain. Now, I absolutely love the public domain. You can also search on the Library of Congress website to find assets for your website or whatever you're making. And after a search for Alice in Wonderland, I found this cool poster which has information about how to access it and how to cite it, plus the option to download it in different file formats. If you find things that have more limited access, you'll only be able to see a thumbnail, just FYI. I also looked on Pinterest, which is another good place to find inspiration if you don't know where to start. For example, I will look up flowers, like flower bouquets or collages, purely to find color schemes because I love working with lots of colors, and a lot of times there are really interesting color combinations just in nature. You can find inspiration anywhere, really. So anyways, I pulled the original White Rabbit illustration from the Lewis Carroll book of Alice in Wonderland because I like his character, and immediately I felt like he'd fit nicely in the bottom right corner of the page. And after looking at it a little bit longer, the Windows icons just weren't speaking to me. So I opted to use images of real items to give the website a found objects type of look. Also, quick shout out to Photopia for providing a free web-based Photoshop alternative. I think that's how you pronounce it. I tried using a newspaper background, but that also wasn't speaking to me. So I was just kind of floundering for ideas at this point. Then I remembered this stationery that I had as a child and decided to scan it and bring it into the background of my website. After cleaning up the lines and removing the text on it, it fit really nicely with the vibe of the home page that I was working towards. I then duplicated it, flipped it horizontally, and cropped the bottom part to help connect the left and right sides of the page. I loved the colors, and it brought that nostalgic feeling that I had been searching for. Then I took some time to replicate it in the mobile view, and then I was ready for development. So whenever I start developing, I always set up an empty GitHub repository and clone it locally. That way everything I do for the project setup is already in the GitHub repository. My favorite framework for web development is React, so I created a project with Create React App. I cleaned it up and removed unnecessary default files, and then set up my file structure for components and assets. I loaded in the asset images that I needed for the homepage, and also created an asset index file that handles all the import statements and then exports them all from one place. I find this to be an easy way to keep my assets organized when I'm working with so many, because I love to use images in my websites. I mean, I guess most people probably do, but I just like to have an index file that just keeps them all organized, imports them all, and then in my individual component files where I'm importing assets, like images, I can just create one import statement rather than many. Then I got to work on recreating the homepage based on the design in Figma. I also realized I was being silly and wrote the email address completely wrong at some point. I wrote graceis.online.com, which the .com part is absolutely unnecessary. I was trying to do the thing where you put the special characters in brackets to break up the email address so that spammers can't scrape your email address from your website with a bot. So, fixed that. What's fun about the development process for me is that it always brings new design ideas. So with the About page, as I was developing it, it didn't look the way that I wanted it to. It was looking too similar to my old portfolio and didn't have the kind of relaxed, fun energy that I wanted it to have. So I did completely redesign that during the development process. And even since the time of screen recording these pages, I'm sure that they have changed, so it probably looks different now. Eventually, I got it to a place that I felt good about, so here's what the homepage looks like, here's the About page, here's the Projects page, which does have a completely separate design from the rest of the website because I wanted it to stand out, and I thought of another design idea, so why not go explore that? And the Explore page, which I'm just putting fun little knickknacks of the internet on there. And of course I also linked to my Instagram and my YouTube channel as well. Once I felt pretty good about it, it was time to publish. So when I'm ready to put up a website, I purchased the domain on Namecheap. I actually purchased it prior to beginning this project because I came up with the name first. I also use Netlify for hosting, and I log in with my GitHub account so that I can pull in a repository and it will just import all those project files. So after connecting it to my repository, Netlify automatically builds the site after every time that I push changes to the main branch. I love using Netlify. I just make my changes locally, push it to my GitHub repository, and then Netlify will automatically build the site. Then lastly, I set up custom DNS management so that the Netlify hosting is connected to the Namecheap domain. You basically just take a couple values that Netlify gives you, go to your domain management in Namecheap, enter those values, and they do a little handshake They meet, they say hi, and you're all good. And then the website was live. So in conclusion, the web development process, and all software development for that matter, is a constant back and forth between design and development. You're always going to be hit with new ideas, inspiration, or roadblocks during the development process that cause you to revisit the design. That's just a natural part of the process. Ultimately, it is really fun to create something from scratch and to have full creative control over every aspect of a website. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave questions in the comments. You can find my website at graceis.online or find me on Instagram with the same username. Thanks for watching. Bye.